Political figures, experts and journalists have descended on the Italian city of Florence for a two-day conference to discuss the problems faced by countries in the European Union. Since the introduction of the Treaty of Lisbon over a year ago, the economy has been a big problem for the 27 member states. In his opening speech, the President of the European Parliament, Jerzy Buzek, acknowledged that the Union was going through difficult times. He admitted that the state of the Union was in a bad way and warned of the dangers of nationalism.
So even if we assess the state of the Union today as not the best one, however, we can admit that not for a moment have we forgotten how big and difficult project would refer our actions to.
German journalist Martin Winter showed less optimism. For him, the Lisbon Treaty hadn't strengthened the role of the 27 European states.
The Union is in a very bad state for the time being. I mean, a lot of things doesn't work. We have the euro crisis, we have different decisions, controversies concerning security policy, like Libya. You know, the Germans voting with abstention in New York, and the French going to war with the British. So the state of the Union is not good.
A similar view shared by Joseph Wheeler, a professor at New York University and an expert in European affairs. He believes the political position of the Union must be strengthened in the eyes of the international community.
I really think that Europe, the most important challenge is to take its political responsibility in the world seriously. And for that, we cannot have a repetition of this farce in the Security Council with Germany voting one way and France and Britain another way. And Europe simply cannot go on relying on American force and American security as it's done for the last 60 years. So for me, that's the most pressing agenda. We leave it to the Americans, and then we complain when they act like cowboys.
During this conference, the Europeans also wanted to understand how they were perceived by the rest of the world. Former Chinese ambassador to France and the Netherlands said he was optimistic.
I know Europe is very resilient. Europeans, they can produce many ideas. I hope over time you'll be able to overcome the challenges and enter a new stage of the European construction.
A pesar de que el presidente de la Comisión Europea no ha podido asistir finalmente a
The President of the European Commission was unable to attend this conference as planned in the programme. But there's no doubt that José Manuel Barroso will be made aware of everything that was said here. Next month, Barroso makes a speech to members of the European Parliament on the State of the Union. We wanted to ask three people who attended the conference in Florence which subjects will dominate discussion. The economic crisis will be the priority for the President of the European Commission, José Manuel Barroso. He needs to make Europeans feel confident in a time where pessimism is high.
I think they really have to deal with the economic crisis. I think when you talk about, when you travel quite a bit in Europe and talk to voters, that's what they're anxious about. The rise of this populist movements in Finland and the Netherlands and France. Part of that is about immigration, but it's mostly because of economic insecurity. And they do not see Brussels, they do not see the Commission, they do not see Europe as helping them. As a matter of fact, if you're in Finland or the Netherlands or Germany, you see the Commission as an advocate for cheating Greeks or profligate Portuguese, and they're taking our money and giving it to these people who don't deserve it. If you're in Greece or Portugal or Ireland, the Commission is representing the Chancellor who is forcing us into an austerity. So unless the Commission sort of comes out and shows itself as an advocate for economic growth, for economic prosperity, that they can turn Europe to growth, I think they're going to have a really hard time in the next couple of years to really prove the case to the voters that Europe is still relevant to them and still can be helpful to them.
For Adrian Héritier, professor at the European University Institute, as well as the economic crisis, immigration must be taken into account by Barroso. I am sure that the financial problems will dominate this speech because the problems are obviously not solved yet. It will last several more years. There is, of course, the problem of immigration. We saw that European solidarity is non-existent. Italy is currently facing problems with immigration from North Africa.
avec l'immigration de l'Afrique du Nord.
And there was Ivo Josipovic, the president of Croatia, one of the 4 prospective countries to become part of the European Union. His priorities were very clear.
Of course, enlargement policy is for us now the most important, and I expect European countries and the EU to recognize Croatian reforms and to accept us to membership.
Despite the experts expressing concern for the EU, 59% of Europeans are rather optimistic about the future. That's according to a recent poll conducted by the European Commission.